The dry snap of tearing paper echoed in the courtroom, a brutal sound that cut through the already heavy air. Judge Dr. Almeida, a sneer on his thin lips, let the pieces of the photograph fall onto the cold floor, right at the feet of attorney Isabella. The children's faces, once smiling in the image, now lay fragmented, a cruel symbol of the inhumanity she had just witnessed. Isabella felt an electric shock course through her body. Her eyes, previously focused on her client's defense, widened in a mixture of disbelief and horror. For an instant, the world seemed to spin. It wasn't just a photo of children, it was the hope, the dignity of a desperate mother that had just been trampled. The mother, Anna, who was handcuffed and her face bathed in tears, let out a muffled sob, a lament that seemed to come from her soul, as she saw the pieces of her children scattered. Dr. Almeida, oblivious to the pain he inflicted, leaned back in his chair with a sick satisfaction. "There, counselor. Let this be a lesson to anyone who thinks they can steal and still demand pity. The law is clear, and sentimentality has no place in this court." His voice was an arrogant snarl, laden with contempt. "Now take your client to the cell. The sentence has been passed." Isabella, however, did not move. The initial shock gave way to a cold, calculated fury that began to simmer in her chest. Her fists clenched, nails digging into her palms. Her breathing became slower and deeper, a conscious effort to control the outburst threatening to escape. She looked at the pieces of the photo, then at Anna's desolate face, and finally at Judge Almeida's smug smile. "Dr. Almeida," Isabella began, her voice low, but with an intensity that made the air vibrate. It was no longer the voice of a defense lawyer, but something deeper, more authoritative. "You have just made a very grave mistake." The judge laughed, a dry, disdainful sound. "A mistake? I merely applied the law, counselor. Perhaps you need a lesson on what a court of justice is." Isabella stepped forward, her eyes fixed on his, and the judge's smile began to falter under the intensity of her gaze. "No, Dr. Almeida, the lesson will be yours." She paused dramatically, allowing the silence to fill the space, heightening the tension. "You just tore up the photo of a desperate mother's children in front of the governor's daughter." The effect of her words was immediate and devastating. Almeida's smile froze, and his eyes, previously full of scorn, widened in panic. The blood seemed to drain from his face, leaving him pale and shocked. He tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. "What? What did you say?" Isabella gave him no time to recover. She pulled her cell phone from the inner pocket of her blazer, her movements precise and determined. With a tap, she dialed a number, keeping her gaze fixed on the judge, who now looked like a statue of terror. "Father?" she said into the phone, her voice now firm and unwavering, without a hint of the emotion that had dominated her moments before. "I need you to authorize me to initiate the process of revoking Judge Almeida's license now." Dr. Almeida staggered backward, hitting his chair. "No, wait! This is a mistake. I didn't know. I didn't mean to." He tried to stand, gesticulating frantically, but his legs seemed to have lost their strength. Isabella ignored him completely, continuing her phone conversation. "Yes, Father. He just tore up the photo of my client's children, a mother who stole milk to feed her kids right in front of me. An act of cruelty and abuse of power that cannot be tolerated. The humiliation was public and deliberate. There is no place for a judge like that in our justice system." On the other end of the line, the governor's voice, though inaudible to the others in the room, was clearly one of shock and indignation. Isabella listened intently, her face serious. "Understood, Father," she said, ending the call. She put away her phone and turned back to face Dr. Almeida, who was now standing, visibly trembling, sweat trickling down his forehead. "Dr. Almeida," Isabella declared, her voice resonating with newfound authority. "On behalf of the governor's office, And with the express authorization of my father, Governor Marcos Silva, your license to practice magistracy is suspended with immediate effect. Revocation proceedings will be initiated today, and I assure you they will be swift and merciless, just as your justice was with this mother." The judge slumped back into his chair, his face livid, his eyes devoid of any hope. The courtroom, once dominated by his arrogance, was now a stage for his ruin. The police officers present, who until then had watched the scene in shock, began to stir, confused but sensing the gravity of the situation. Isabella turned to Anna, the mother. "Ms. Anna, your arrest is revoked. You are free, and I assure you that you and your children will receive all necessary support." Anna, still in shock, couldn't believe it. The tears now streaming down her face were of relief and gratitude. Justice, in an unexpected and dramatic way, had just turned the tables. The corrupt judge, who had felt untouchable, was about to pay the price for his cruelty. The silence that followed Isabella's declaration was heavier than any shout, more deafening than any bang. It seemed as if the very air had been sucked from the courtroom, leaving a vacuum of disbelief and shock. The two police officers, who until then had remained motionless as statues, exchanged confused glances, their expressions wavering between perplexity and a sudden respect for the young lawyer. One of them, a burly man with a grizzled mustache, stepped forward, his voice hesitant. "Counselor Isabella, with all due respect, are you sure? Suspending a judge's license, just like that, immediately." Isabella spun on her heels, her blue eyes flashing with unwavering determination. "I am absolutely sure, Sergeant. The authorization came directly from the governor's office. Dr. Almeida no longer has the authority to preside over this court, nor to pronounce sentences. He is, at this very moment, an ordinary citizen under investigation for abuse of power." Dr. Almeida, pale and sweating, tried to compose himself, a last vestige of his old arrogance fighting against the panic that overwhelmed him. "This is absurd. A farce. You can't do this. I am a judge. I have years of service. The governor can't just—" Isabella interrupted him, her voice cutting like a blade. "He can, Dr. Almeida, and he did. Your conduct here today, the public humiliation of a desperate mother, the tearing of her children's photo, that is not applying the law. It is cruelty. It is an outrage to the justice you swore to uphold. And my father, Governor Marcos Silva, does not tolerate outrages." The judge tried to stand again, his hands trembling, but his legs gave way, and he fell back into his chair, a hollow sound echoing in the room. His face was now completely livid, his eyes fixed on Isabella, but without truly seeing her, as if he were staring into the abyss of his own ruin. "Sergeant," Isabella continued, turning to the police officer, her voice softer but still laden with authority. "Please, remove Ms. Anna's handcuffs. She's free. And please, escort Dr. Almeida out of this room. He should not remain here." The sergeant, though still visibly shaken, nodded. The hierarchy, even if so abruptly inverted, was clear. He approached Anna, who was still sitting in the defendant's chair, her eyes wide, unable to process the avalanche of events. With a metallic click, the handcuffs were removed from her wrists. Anna rubbed her reddened wrists, tears rolling again, but now they were tears of almost unbearable relief. I'm free," she whispered, her voice choked. Isabella knelt in front of her, taking Anna's hands. "Yes, Anna, you are free, and you are not alone. I assure you that you and your children will have all the necessary support. Don't worry about food, about rent. We will take care of everything. No one deserves to go through what you have, much less for an act of desperation to feed their children." Anna couldn't respond. She simply pulled Isabella into a tight embrace, an embrace that contained all the gratitude, fear, and hope that flooded her. Isabella hugged her back, feeling the woman's trembling body, and for an instant, the calculated coldness that had dominated her gave way to a wave of empathy and sadness for the injustice she had witnessed. Meanwhile, the other police officer approached Dr. Almeida. "Dr. Almeida, please, we need you to leave." The judge, still in shock, didn't move. The officer, with a sigh, had to help him up. Almeida staggered, his eyes vacant, and was led out of the room, his dragging footsteps echoing like the epitaph of his career. The door closed behind him, sealing the fate of a man who, moments before, had felt untouchable. Isabella stood up, helping Anna to do the same. She looked at the pieces of the photograph scattered on the floor, the fragmented children's faces. With a sigh, she bent down and carefully collected the pieces, putting them in her blazer pocket. "Come on, Anna, we have a lot to do." As she left the courtroom, Isabella felt the weight of responsibility, but also a deep satisfaction. Justice, though late and provoked by an act of cruelty, had prevailed. And she, the governor's daughter, had been the instrument of that turnaround. The tables had indeed turned, and this was just the beginning. Isabella led Anna out of the courthouse, where the buzz of the press was already forming, drawn by the unusual commotion. Reporters and photographers crowded around, but Isabella, with a firm gesture, indicated to one of her aides, who was already waiting, to clear a path. "Take Ms. Anna to a safe and discreet location, far from here. Arrange a car, food, and a comfortable hotel room for her and her children. Contact their school and ensure they are released immediately. I will personally call social services to initiate follow-up." The aide, an efficient young man named Lucas, nodded promptly, already dialing on his cell phone. "Understood, Counselor Isabella. We'll take care of everything." Anna, still dazed, looked at Isabella. "My children, are they okay?" "They will be, Anna," Isabella assured, squeezing her hand. "I'll make sure of it. Now go with Lucas. He'll take care of you." As Anna was discreetly escorted to a dark car, Isabella turned to the crowd of journalists, her face serious and determined. "Ladies and gentlemen of the press," she began, her voice clear and strong, "what we witnessed today in this courtroom was a grave failure of the judicial system, an unacceptable abuse of power. Dr. Almeida, in an act of cruelty and inhumanity, tore up the photo of the children of a desperate mother who was merely trying to feed her family. Such conduct will not be tolerated." Camera flashes exploded and questions began to rain down. "Councillor Silva, what is your relationship with Governor Marcos Silva? Is it true that the judge was suspended on the spot? What will happen to Dr. Almeida now?" Isabella raised her hand, silencing the crowd. "Yes, it is true. Dr. Almeida's license has been suspended with immediate effect, and revocation proceedings will be initiated. My father, Governor Marcos Silva, does not tolerate justice being used as a tool of oppression. As for Ms. Anna, she is free and will receive all necessary support from the governor's office. The law must protect the most vulnerable, not crush them. This is just the first step to ensure that justice is truly fair in our state." With that declaration, Isabella walked away, leaving behind a wave of shock and speculation. She knew that the legal battle against Almeida would be intense and that the political repercussions would be enormous. But as she watched the car carrying Anna drive away, she felt an unwavering conviction. She had done the right thing, and she was ready for the consequences. Isabella walked away from the crowd of journalists, the buzz of their voices and the flash of cameras still echoing in her ears and eyes. Her aide, Lucas, was already waiting for her, with an expression that mixed admiration and concern. "Councillor Isabella, the repercussions will be enormous. Calls are already coming in from all the broadcasters," Lucas said, showing her his phone, which wouldn't stop ringing. "I know, Lucas. It's exactly what we need. Let everyone know that justice is not an instrument for tyrants," Isabella replied, her voice still firm, but with a weariness that was beginning to show. Ensure the communication team is ready for any questions, and make sure Anna's story is told with dignity, without sensationalism. Focus on injustice and redemption. Yes, Counselor Isabella and the governor. He called. It seems he wants to speak with you as soon as possible. Isabella nodded. I figured. Prepare the car, Lucas. I'm going to his office now. As the car drove her through the busy streets of the capital, Isabella closed her eyes for an instant. The adrenaline began to subside, giving way to a feeling of exhaustion. She had acted on impulse, yes, but an impulse born of a deep conviction. The image of the pieces of Anna's children's photo, torn with such cruelty, burned in her mind. She had to do it. It wasn't just for Anna, it was for all the Annas the system failed to protect. Upon arriving at the governor's office, the atmosphere was tense. Marco Silva, a man of imposing presence and graying hair, stood beside his large mahogany desk, his gaze fixed on the window overlooking the city. He turned as Isabella entered, his eyes meeting hers. There was no anger, but a seriousness that weighed in the air. Isabella, he began, his voice calm, but with unquestionable authority. You know the storm you've just unleashed, don't you? I know, Father, and I don't regret it, she replied without faltering. What Dr. Almeida did was unacceptable. He used the power of his office to humiliate and destroy an already vulnerable woman, tearing up her children's photo. That was the limit. Marcos sighed, running a hand over his face. I understand your indignation, daughter, and to be frank, I agree with you. That man crossed a line, but the way you acted, it was a risky move. Suspending a judge in open court, using my authority, that will set a precedent and an unprecedented political war. He deserved it, Father, and if it hadn't been for that, he would have continued to do as he pleased, untouchable. Someone had to stop him, Isabella argued, the passion in her voice evident. I couldn't stay silent, not after seeing what I saw. The governor watched her for a long moment, a mixture of pride and concern in his eyes. I know, my daughter, and deep down, that's why I trust you. But now, we need to be prepared. The Association of Magistrates will react. The opposition will use this to attack me. We will have to be impeccable. I'm ready for it, Father, and Ms. Anna also needs protection. Lucas has already taken her to a safe place. We need to ensure that she and her children have all the support. I'm already taking care of that, Marcos stated, picking up the phone. Social services have already been contacted, and I want you to lead the legal team that will handle Almeida's revocation process. Show them we're not playing around. Meanwhile, in the discreet hotel on the outskirts of the city, Anna was hugging her children. The smell of soap and the warmth of the hot shower had washed away the grime and the fear of the courtroom. Her children, Pedro and Sofia, ate sandwiches with voracity, their eyes wide at the novelty of the spacious room and the television. Mommy, are we going to live here now? Sofia asked, her mouth full. Inna smiled, a solitary tear tracing a path down her face. No, my loves, but we're going to be okay. The lady, Counselor Isabella, she helped us. She's very kind. She looked at the small pile of clean clothes on the bed, at the basket of fresh fruit on the table, at the peace that by a miracle had returned. The fear was still there, a persistent shadow, but hope, once an almost invisible thread, now shone with renewed intensity. She was free, and for the first time in a long time, she was not alone. Far from there, Dr. Almeida was in a cold, windowless interrogation room, answering questions from a prosecutor and a representative from the Internal Affairs Office. His face, once arrogant, was now marked by humiliation and dread. His career, his reputation, everything was crumbling around him. The tables had indeed turned, and the price of his cruelty was only just beginning to be exacted. Isabella arrived at her own office on the same floor as the governor's cabinet, where her legal team was already waiting for her. The meeting room was ready, with papers and laptops open, and the faces of her associate lawyers reflected a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. She sat at the head of the table, adjusting her blazer, the image of the pieces of Anna's photo still vivid in her mind. "Good evening, everyone," she began, her voice echoing the authority the moment demanded. "As you may already know, what happened in court today was unprecedented. Dr. Almeida has had his license suspended and will face revocation proceedings, and we will be the team responsible for it." One of the lawyers, Dr. Gustavo, an experienced and pragmatic man, cleared his throat. "Counselor Isabella, with all due respect, the Association of Magistrates is already mobilizing. They will allege political interference, abuse of authority by the governor. It will be an extremely difficult legal and political battle. I know, Gustavo, and we are ready for it," Isabella replied, her gaze firm. "This is not just about a suspended judge. It is about the integrity of our justice system. What Almeida did was an affront to human dignity and to the very law he swore to uphold. Tearing up the photo of a desperate mother's children, that cannot be tolerated. Our strategy will be twofold: to prove misconduct and breach of decorum, and to expose the culture of impunity that allows judges to act above the law." She picked up a pen and began to write on a pad. "I want you to dig up all of Dr. Almeida's previous cases. Look for patterns of behavior, questionable decisions, any indication of abuse of power. We need an impeccable dossier, and above all, Ms. Anna will be our key witness. Her story is living proof of Almeida's cruelty." As the team began to discuss the first steps, Isabella felt the weight of responsibility. She knew she was challenging a system, but the conviction that she was doing the right thing propelled her forward. Far from there, in the discreet hotel, Ina watched her children sleep. Pedro, his small hand clutching his teddy bear, and Sophia with a dreamy smile on her face. The room was warm, clean, and the silence was a blessing. She felt safe, but the image of the courtroom, of the judge, of the humiliation, still haunted her. A soft knock on the door startled her. It was Lucas, Isabella's aide, with a fruit basket and some toys for the children. "Miss Anna, how are things? Are the children well?" he asked, with a gentleness that calmed her. "They're sleeping, thank God." "Thank you, Lucas." "For everything," Anna replied, her voice choked. I still can't believe all this is happening." "Counselor Isabella is taking care of everything. She is very determined, and the governor is also committed to ensuring that you and your children have all the support," Lucas explained, placing the basket on the table. "Tomorrow morning, a social worker will come to talk to you about housing, school, and other needs. Don't worry about any of that for now, just rest." Anna nodded, feeling a pang of hope, but also the fear of the unknown. And the judge. What will happen to him? Lucas hesitated for a moment. "He is being investigated. Counselor Isabella and her team will ensure he answers for his actions. Justice will be served, Ms. Anna." Meanwhile, in a temporary detention cell, Dr. Almeida sat on a cold concrete bench. The prosecutor and the internal affairs representative had left, leaving him alone with his thoughts. His suit was crumpled, his tie loosened, his face pale and sweaty. The initial shock had given way to impotent rage, and finally, to a growing dread. He tried to call his lawyer, but his cell phone had been confiscated. The metal door opened, and a guard handed him a landline phone. "A call, Dr. Almeida, your wife." Almeida picked up the phone, his hand trembling. "Darling, The voice on the other end was cold and distant. "Almeida, what have you done? The television is talking about you. Our name is mud. How could you be so stupid?" His wife's voice, once a balm, was now a whip. He tried to defend himself, but her words crushed him. I don't know what happened. That woman, she tricked me." "Tricked?" You tore up her children's photo in front of everyone. Do you think anyone will believe you? Our life is over, Almeida. It's over. The call was abruptly ended. Almeida let the phone drop, the sound echoing in the cell. His arrogance had crumbled to dust. The untouchability he so prized had shattered into 1,000 pieces. The tables had indeed turned, and the price of his cruelty was being exacted in ways he had never imagined. The darkness of the cell seemed to swallow him, and for the first time in his life, Dr. Almeida felt completely alone and terrified. Night advanced in Isabella's office, but the energy in the meeting room was unwavering. The lawyers, initially apprehensive, now seemed infected by their leader's determination. Mind maps formed on the whiteboard, and piles of documents began to be organized. "We need an aggressive timeline," Isabella declared, tapping lightly on the table with her pen. "Gustavo, you and your team will be responsible for scouring Dr. Almeida's history. I want every controversial decision, every complaint, every archived disciplinary proceeding. Leave no stone unturned. We need a pattern of behavior, something that shows today's incident was not an isolated case, but rather the culmination of abusive behavior." Gustavo nodded, already making frantic notes. "Councillor Isabella, the Association of Magistrates has already issued a statement condemning the undue interference of the executive branch in the judiciary. The press is in an uproar. They will try to discredit Ms. Anna, perhaps even the governor." "Expected," Isabella replied, unfazed. "They will try to turn this into a political war to divert focus from the real issue, corruption and abuse of power within the judiciary itself. Our defense will be the truth. Anna's story is irrefutable, and the image of Dr. Almeida tearing up her children's photo is proof of his cruelty." She paused, looking at each of her lawyers. "This is not just a legal case, it is a statement that no one is above the law, especially those who should defend it." As the team delved into the research, Isabella felt the weight of responsibility, but also an unwavering conviction. She knew she was challenging a system, but the image of Anna's eyes, full of despair and then a faint hope, propelled her forward. The soft breathing of Pedro and Sofia was a melody of peace she hadn't heard in a long time. The room was warm, clean, and the silence was a blessing, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioning. She felt safe, but the image of the courtroom, of the judge, of the humiliation, still haunted her like a recently ended nightmare. It was morning. Lucas, Isabella's aide, was there again, accompanied by a middle-aged woman with a welcoming smile and an identification badge. "Good morning, Ms. Anna," Lucas said, his voice gentle. "This is Ms. Lucia, a social worker. She's here to talk to you about the next steps." Lucia entered, her eyes conveying a professional calm. "Good morning, Anna. Don't worry, we're here to help. Councillor Isabella and the governor are very committed to ensuring that you and your children have all the necessary support to start anew." Anna felt tears well up. I don't even know where to begin to thank you." "You don't need to thank us, Anna. Just focus on yourself and the children," Lucia replied, sitting in the armchair. "We'll talk about housing, school for the children, perhaps some psychological support for you, and also about your immediate needs. What do you need now?" Anna hesitated, her voice choked. "I just want my children to be safe, that they don't go hungry anymore, that they have a real home." Lucia nodded, picking up a notepad. "We will achieve that. The first step is to ensure a safe and stable place for you. We have some options for temporary shelters, or, if you prefer, we can look for a small apartment with social rent. And school for Pedro and Sofia will be arranged immediately." As Lucia spoke, Anna felt a pang of hope, but also the fear of the unknown. It was a lot of information, many changes, but for the first time in a long time, she was not alone. Almeida was sitting on a cold, concrete bench. His face pale and sweaty, his crumpled suit, his loosened tie, he looked like a ghost of his former self. The metal door opened, and his lawyer, Dr. Mendez, entered, his face grim. "Almeida," Mendez began, his voice low, but laden with a seriousness that made the judge tremble. "The situation is much worse than you imagine. The Association of Magistrates is furious, but not with the governor. They are furious with you for having exposed everyone. The press is having a field day. Your image is destroyed. There are videos of the incident circulating." Almeida stood up abruptly, rage bubbling. "Videos? What videos? That woman, that lawyer, she set me up. She provoked me." Mendez looked at him with disdain. "It doesn't matter what you think happened. What matters is what the public saw. An arrogant judge tearing up the photo of a desperate mother's children. There is no defense for that, Almeida. The governor is using all his political weight. The revocation process is already underway, and the chances are minimal." The judge felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. "But I am a judge. They can't do this. I have influence. I have contacts." "Not anymore," Mendez cut in, his voice cold. "Your contacts are distancing themselves faster than you can imagine. No one wants to be associated with you now. Your wife has already called me, threatening divorce. Your assets are being frozen. You are alone, Almeida, completely alone." Almeida slumped back onto the bench, his hands trembling. Almeida felt completely helpless and terrified. Morning advanced in the discreet hotel, and the conversation between Ana, Lucia, and Lucas continued, weaving the first threads of an uncertain yet promising future. Lucia, with her calm and professional voice, detailed the options. "Ms. Ana, the government has provided a temporarily furnished apartment. It's a safe space with 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen. The children would have a place to call their own. Or if you prefer, we can look for something more permanent, but that would take a little longer." Ana looked at her children, who were still sleeping soundly, oblivious to the upheaval in their lives. The idea of a home, even a temporary one, was a balm for her exhausted soul. "The apartment. Sounds good. To start, I just want them to have a place to call home, a place where they feel safe." Lucia smiled, a genuine smile that conveyed comfort. "Great. And regarding school, we already have guaranteed spots in an institution near the apartment. Pedro and Sofia can start in a few days, as soon as you settle in and feel more comfortable." Ana felt a lump in her throat, tears welling up again. But this time, they were tears of relief. I don't know what to say. It's all happening so fast." "It's for your good, Ana, so you can start over as quickly as possible," Lucas interjected, his voice gentle. Ana turned to her children, her hand caressing Sofia's soft hair. They're going to be so happy. The image of her children playing in their own room, going to school, seemed like a distant dream that was now materializing. "And for you, Ana," Lucia continued with seriousness, "we need to think about you too. There are psychological support programs, and we can also help you find a job, if that's your wish. When you feel ready, the important thing is that you are not alone." Ana nodded, her voice choked with emotion. I just want to be able to take care of them, truly." Hope, once a thin thread, now solidified in her heart, promising a new beginning. Meanwhile, in the cold, dark cell, Dr. Almeida was alone, terrified. His lawyer, Dr. Mendez's words echoed in his mind like a hammer, crushing the last vestige of his self-confidence. "It can't be. It can't be true," he whispered, his voice hoarse and disbelieving. He stood up abruptly, trying to walk around the cell, but the cramped space prevented him. The image of his wife, her voice, "Our life is over, Almeida," pierced his thoughts. His contacts, his friends, the web of influence he had woven over the years, everything had unraveled in the blink of an eye. No one wanted to be associated with the fallen judge. He remembered the arrogant smile he wore in court, the way he tore up that woman's children's photo. The irony was cruel, bitter. He, the judge, the untouchable, was now judged and condemned by everyone, not by law, but by public opinion and the loss of his own power and status. There was no regret for the mother or the children, only impotent rage at the loss of everything he valued. The cold of the cell, the smell of disinfectant, the overwhelming loneliness. He wasn't used to this. He, who had always controlled, who had always been at the top, was now a prisoner, an outcast. He huddled in the corner, hugging his knees, his body trembling not from cold, but from an existential dread. The man who saw himself above all was now nothing, a ghost of his former glory. Back in Isabella's office, the energy was palpable. The team of lawyers was gathered, their eyes fixed on Gustavo, who presented his findings. "Counselor Isabella, we found something significant. Dr. Almeida has a history of questionable decisions in cases involving low-income individuals. There are at least 3 disciplinary proceedings filed for lack of evidence or insufficient evidence, all related to abuse of authority or disrespectful treatment." Isabella nodded, a gleam of satisfaction in her eyes. "Excellent. That's exactly what we need. A pattern. It wasn't an isolated incident. He has a history of using his power to oppress the most vulnerable." Another lawyer added, "The press is starting to pick up on these details. There are leaks, and the narrative is changing. The Association of Magistrates is in a difficult position. They can no longer defend the indefensible without further tarnishing their own image." Isabella tapped lightly on the table. "Good. Keep the pressure on. I want each of these cases reopened. We will show Dr. Almeida's true face and prepare a complete dossier for the Public Prosecutor's Office and the Internal Affairs. We will leave no room for doubt." She picked up the phone, dialing a number quickly. "Father, yes, it's me. Things are progressing. Yes, I know. The political pressure is great, but we are managing to turn the tide. The truth is coming out. Don't worry. We'll see this through to the end." She hung up, a determined glint in her eyes. "No one is above the law," she murmured to herself, her conviction unwavering. The soft morning light filtered through the curtains of the new apartment, painting the small room with golden hues. Ana watched Pedro and Sofia sleeping in their separate beds for the first time in a long time. The mattress was soft, the sheet clean, and the silence was broken only by the children's quiet breathing. It was a simple apartment, but lovingly furnished. A modest sofa in the living room, a compact dining table, and a functional kitchen. Lucia and Lucas had ensured the refrigerator was stocked with basics, and there were even some new toys for the children. Upon waking, Pedro and Sofia explored the new space with a mixture of curiosity and contained joy. "Mommy, look, I have a bed all to myself," Sofia exclaimed, jumping on the mattress. Pedro, older, touched the walls, as if to make sure everything was real. Ana watched them, a tired but genuine smile blooming on her lips. This was the home she had dreamed of, a safe haven. 2 days later, Lucia accompanied Ana and the children to their new school. Pedro and Sofia, with new backpacks and clean uniforms, seemed nervous but also excited. "Don't worry, my loves. It's going to be fun," Ana said, squeezing their hands. As she watched them enter the school gate, Ana felt a mixture of pride and relief. It was a beginning. For her, Lucia had provided a list of vocational courses and some part-time job options for when she felt ready. The social worker also scheduled the first session with a psychologist. "It's important that you take care of yourself too, Ana. So you can take care of them," Lucia had insisted, with her calm and empathetic voice. As Ana's life began to rebuild, Dr. Almeida's world crumbled further. In his cell, time seemed static, each minute an eternity of torment. He clung to the hope that his contacts could intervene, that the machinery of justice, which he had so often manipulated, could be manipulated in his favor one last time. But reality was relentless. On the day scheduled for the National Council of Justice, CNJ, judgment session, the tension in the prison was palpable, even for him. Almeida was escorted to a video conference room in the prison where he would follow the session. Dr. Mendez was there, pale and resigned. "Almeida, try to maintain your composure," he whispered, his voice almost inaudible. "It's the best we can do now." The big screen lit up, revealing the imposing table of the CNJ. The councillors, with their serious countenances, seemed like judges of his own soul. The Attorney General presented the case with brutal clarity. The videos, Anna's testimonies, the evidence from the reopened old cases, everything was displayed mercilessly. Each word was a stake driven into Almeida's chest. He saw his face, arrogant and disdainful, tearing up Anna's children's photo. The image, once a symbol of his power, was now irrefutable proof of his cruelty. "Dr. Almeida's conduct," declared the Attorney General, his voice echoing in the room, "is not merely an individual failure, but an affront to the dignity of justice and the trust of the people. He abused his authority, humiliated the vulnerable, and corrupted the very oath he took. His continued presence in the magistracy is unsustainable and would represent a continuous danger to the integrity of the judicial system." Almeida felt cold sweat trickle down his forehead. He tried to argue, to murmur something about a conspiracy, but Mendez silenced him with a look. There was no more room for denial. The room was full of journalists and OAB members, and among them, with a firm posture and determined gaze, was Isabella. She didn't say a word, but her presence was a constant reminder of what he had done and who she was. The councillors voted. One by one, their voices added up, each yes for the revocation resonating like a death knell for Almeida's career. The CNJ president, with a grave expression, delivered the final sentence. Unanimously, the National Council of Justice decides to revoke Dr. Ricardo Almeida's license to practice magistracy with immediate effect. His conduct is incompatible with the ethics and morality required of a judge. May this case serve as an example and a warning to all. The screen went black. The silence in the prison's video conference room was deafening. Almeida felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. There was no more Dr. Almeida, no more power, status, respect. He was just Ricardo Almeida, a disbarred, humiliated man with an uncertain and bleak future. The rage that consumed him gave way to a chilling emptiness, a despair so profound that he felt the air leave his lungs. He had lost everything, and this time there was no turning back. Meanwhile, in the governor's office, Isabella watched the news of Almeida's revocation. The feeling was bittersweet. A victory, yes, but the fight was far from over. "It's the first step, Father," she said into the phone. "The revocation is fundamental, but criminal justice still needs to be served, and more importantly, we need to ensure the system changes." "You are right, my daughter," the governor replied. "There is still much work ahead, but today you restored a little of people's faith in justice. You showed that no one is above the law." Isabella hung up, feeling the weight and responsibility of her actions. She knew that Almeida's downfall was just the beginning of a larger journey to reform the system. Far from there, in her small, temporary apartment, Anna heard the news on television. Pedro and Sofia played on the floor, oblivious to the gravity of the moment. Anna felt a lump in her throat. It wasn't joy, but a feeling of relief, and finally, peace. That man, who had tried to crush her, was receiving his own dose of justice. She looked at her children, at the future Isabella had helped build, and a solitary tear rolled down her face. It was a tear of hope. Life was, indeed, beginning anew. The screen went black. There was no more Dr. Almeida. Dr. Mendez, visibly shaken, placed a hand on Almeida's shoulder. "I'm sorry, Ricardo, We did what we could. But the lawyer's voice seemed distant, muffled by the cacophony of thoughts in Almeida's mind. He pushed Mendez's hand away. Get out of here, all of you. This is a farce, a conspiracy. But his words lacked their former strength. They were just the grunts of a defeated man. The guards entered, and Almeida was led back to his cell, the image of the CNJ councillors. With their impassive faces etched in his mind, the revocation was just the beginning. The feeling was bittersweet. The revocation was the professional punishment. Now would come the personal, the criminal. She would dedicate herself to ensuring that the public prosecutor's office had all the necessary support for the upcoming trial. Days turned into weeks. Almeida, now an ordinary defendant, faced the public prosecutor's charges for abuse of authority, breach of decorum, passive corruption, and malfeasance. The criminal trial was scheduled, and media attention was even greater. Each day, more details of his double life and his corruption schemes came to light, painting a grim picture of a man who used his judicial robe for personal gain. In the courtroom, the atmosphere was charged. Almeida, pale and visibly aged, sat in the defendant's dock, his once haughty eyes now averting their gaze. The prosecutor, with a firm and incisive voice, presented the evidence. The testimonies of victims from old cases, records of suspicious payments, and of course Anna's testimony. When Anna was called to the stand, a heavy silence fell over the room. She was nervous, but Isabella's presence in the front row, with an encouraging look, gave her strength. With a choked but clear voice, Anna recounted the events of that fateful day. Her children's desperation, the theft of the milk, the humiliation in court, and the moment Almeida tore up the photo of Pedro and Sofia. He laughed, Anna said, tears streaming. He tore up the only photo I had of them, right in front of me, as if we were nothing, as if my children's lives were worth nothing. Anna's emotions spread to everyone in the room. Many journalists and OAB members, including Isabella, had teary eyes. Almeida, in the defendant's dock, cringed, unable to face the woman he had tried to destroy. Almeida's defense was weak, based on denials and accusations of political persecution. But the evidence was overwhelming. After days of testimonies and arguments, the jury retired to deliberate. The wait was agonizing for everyone, but especially for Almeida, who felt the net closing in. When the jury returned, the tension was palpable. The jury foreman read the verdict, guilty. The word echoed in the room, a final blow for Ricardo Almeida. He slumped onto the bench, his head in his hands, the reality of his conviction finally hitting him. The sentence was severe, years in prison for his crimes, an ignominious end to a career he had stained with his own corruption and cruelty. Isabella felt a profound relief. Justice, though late, had been served. She approached Anna, who was crying silently, but now with tears of liberation. "It's over, Anna," Isabella whispered, hugging her. "You are safe now. Your children are safe." As Almeida was led away in handcuffs, the image of a broken man, Isabella knew that the true victory was not just the punishment of an individual, but the hope for a fairer system. She looked to the future, to the reforms that still needed to be implemented, to the voices that still needed to be heard. The journey was long, but the seed of change had been planted, and she, Isabella, was ready to cultivate it.